Well, it's been a little bit since we've done one of these. Happy to be joined on Zoom by Ayron Jones, I assume all the way from Seattle, Washington.
Yep, that's where I'm at, man.
It's before we talk about music and all that, being from Seattle, I want to ask you as a Michigander and a dude who has to watch the Lions suck week in and week out, I want to ask like what it feels like to have a team that you can be proud of, a team that, you know, has been winning. I mean, I realize you went through like the Rick Meyer stuff and stuff, things like that. So you had some rough patches, but you've been there a few times now. How does it feel?
I think a rough patch would be an understatement, to be honest. We had a good, pretty much since the franchise started, it was pretty rough. I mean, there was some hope there every now and again, but it was never, up until about 2013, we didn't really have a consistently good football team. So I think 2012 on is about the time that we've started having that. It feels good to have it for now, you know what I'm saying? And I'm going to enjoy this era and soak it up for what it's worth right now. I wish we had maybe one or two more Super Bowls under our belt, but it's pretty nice so far to look forward to seeing your team play, even though I think everyone in Seattle gets anxiety and a bit of a heart attack every time we see the Seahawks play, just because they're playing style, but it feels good.
I wish I could say the same about the team that I get to watch here, because I don't know if you know the history of the Lions, but they've won nothing.
I know the history of the Lions. I do. I'm pretty familiar.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget sometimes that Seattle is a great sports town. Not only the Seahawks, but I mean, you had the Mariners. You got to watch Griffey and Edgar Martinez and Ichiro, and you had, I mean, I don't want to bring up, you know, bad things, but you had the Sonics until they left town. So you got to, I know, but you got to watch like Sean Kemp and Gary Payton. Now you've got an NHL team coming to town, which is awesome.
Yeah, well, you know, Seattle has always been a great sports town, and we've always been like the sports underdog town. I mean, you know, as big as Seattle is in terms of the national and the world view, it actually is a bit of a smaller city in terms of a metropolis. So we've always just kind of stuck behind our sports teams no matter what. Like the Mariners have gone through a rough patch now for the last 10, 15 years, you know. And still, but you're still going to see people, diehard Mariners fans out there that are always going to root for the Mariners and hope they do well every year. Every single year, the saying with the Mariners is, oh, they're going to be great this year. And, you know, lo and behold, like halfway through the season, we're just like, it's over. You know,
Believe me, and again, I'll go back to the Lions. That's the hope every year when the Lions start, is maybe the draft goes all right, and you think maybe Matthew Stafford, this will be his year, and then like they get shut out by the Carolina Panthers, who don't have Teddy Bridgewater or Christian McCaffrey, and you go, okay, well, this season's over. This is done.
Right. So it's it. That's it. We shouldn't even tried.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Right. As a lifelong Seahawks fan, how awesome was it to perform the national anthem at Lumen Field, I guess is now what it's called, but that's not what it was called. It was CenturyLink for years or whatever, but now it's Lumen Field. What was it like performing the national anthem there?
It was eerie. It was bittersweet. It was amazing to be able to do that, and it meant a lot for me. I think in the time period too. I think that was like the week that the networks decided to stop airing the national anthem as well. You know, which I thought was probably the best idea, regardless of political affiliation or whatever. I think if something's causing us to continue to fight, like the obvious option is just to do away with it. You know, and so, but even then, I thought it was important for someone like myself, a person of color that comes from the Seattle music scene, and that comes from you know, the background that I come from, to be able to perform and play the national anthem, kind of just to show people that, like, you know, despite whatever arguments we may have or whatever causes we may be behind, that the national anthem isn't just for one or another person. Regardless of where you're from, it's our national anthem. So it was beautiful to be able to do that. It was a little bittersweet just because of the time period. I mean, during COVID, for it to be, you know, kind of as rampant as it's been, and to have played such a, you know, hit the economy and sports and everything so hard, it was a little eerie to play in front of nobody in an empty stadium, you know. And so but I was very proud to be able to do so, and to be able to have been picked by the Seahawks to do the national anthem. It was a special event for me, you know, but I miss seeing people. I miss everybody, you know.
I got to imagine that once things are, and you hear back to normal all the time, once things are back to normal, that they've got to invite you back when people are there, right?
I'm sure of it, man. I mean, I've kept a really good relationship with the Seahawks now for a number of years. So, and as things have progressed in my career, the Seahawks have always stepped up to allow me more opportunities to expose myself to, you know, a wider audience. So I'm sure of it.
Obviously, we can't talk about Seattle without talking about the music scene. How much did growing up in Seattle with Hendrix and Hart and grunge, how much did that influence just you getting into music in the first place?
Oh, heavily. I mean, you can't. This is such a diverse music city too. You couldn't have grown up here in the time that I grew up in the '90s. You couldn't have grown up here without being affected by that sound in some way or another. I mean, in middle school dances and stuff, when kids were slow dancing to all the pop hits, we were blasting Nirvana and Soundgarden and heavy rock. So like, it's impossible to have lived here and grown up here and not be affected somehow by someone who was highly influential in the music scene, whether it be Ray Charles or Jimi Hendrix or someone like Kurt Cobain or Chris Cornell, or bands like Mudhoney, and even, I mean, I'll even go as far back as the Kingsmen, like those are all highly influential people.
Do you feel like there's extra pressure on a musician coming out of Seattle as opposed to you're a guitar player from Omaha, Nebraska, and they don't have this sort of massive musical lineage like Seattle does? Do you feel like there's the extra pressure to really sort of not blaze your own trail, but really put your stamp on it, to really be a guy that's going to bring that Seattle sound and that's going to do something? Do you feel that extra pressure?
I wouldn't necessarily call it pressure, but it definitely, the bar is set pretty high for sure. And if you choose to take that route, I mean, you got to remember bands like The Head and the Heart come from here too. Brandon Carlisle comes from Seattle too. So the Seattle sound is pretty diverse in that way. But if you choose to step into the hard rock vein, which I have chosen to do, the bar is definitely set pretty high, and you always want to make sure that you're paying homage to those that came before you and blazed that trail. So I definitely I do feel that there are some big shoes to fill, and I'm always keeping that in mind as I'm writing and playing and continuing to perform and put my stuff on the line.
Talking about some of those influences, I mean, I know that you've got kind of the stamp of approval from Mike McCready and from Duff McKagan. What's it like, those massive Seattle, heroes saying, yeah, Ayron Jones, he's legit, he's the guy? What does it feel like as a dude who grew up watching these guys that now they've shown up to shows and they've kind of taking you under their wings, so to speak? I mean, you've played with GNR. I mean, what's that like?
It's pretty surreal, man. I mean, that's a cliche thing to say, but it's something where I could really use. When you grow up, I mean, even as far as Sir Mix-a-Lot, for instance, in 2013 when we dropped that independent record, and like those things have all been surreal when you grow up watching these cats and hearing about their legacy and what they've done. And these are legends. I mean, these are cats that are enshrined in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so just to have them in my corner has been nothing but short of a blessing. And and I'm always trying to do the best I can to make them all proud, and I also lean on them in times when I'm at a crossroads or finding that I'm having some difficulty navigating these waters of the major music industry. So it's been really great to have them in my corner, and these are people I look up to and lean on the most in my time of need.
I know you mentioned the indie release from back in 2013. What's it like to now be signed to a major label? And I mean, I got to assume, I'm just a radio dude, I have no idea the inner working. I know some of it, not a lot of it. I got to imagine that the major label stuff is totally different than going out and doing it on your own.
Definitely. I mean, there's definitely a lot more resources. There's a lot, it takes less time to get things done. You know what I mean? Like that's really helpful. So there's some things that are very much the same, which is that, you still need to make great music. You still have a lot of work to do. It's just the work is different, and you have more people to help you get that done. So I'm really thankful to be signed to a major label and just the access. I mean, mind you, like not right now I'm on the charts, and I've been in the top 10 now for about a month, and that's something that's really hard to achieve as an independent artist, especially in the rock genre, so those things are things that I'm really grateful to have on my side, and the people and the resources in my corner.
So I think your move into music just in general, I mean, I think people assume that because you got your start in Seattle, like you heard Nevermind for the first time and you're like, yeah, that's me. That's what I want to do. I want to play music. And that's not what happened. I mean, you started in church as opposed to hearing Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and going, yep, I'm going to be that guy. Your musical beginning started long before that.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. So like those things are happening simultaneously at the same time, right? So I'm growing up in church and I'm singing and like, the church I went to was really heavily, for I think for a lot of poor black families and a lot of poor families, the church was a place where, whereas we couldn't get singing lessons, you couldn't get guitar lessons, you couldn't get those music lessons, or even acting lessons. That was a place where you could get those things. And so for me, church was like my first instance of music school, and so that was very highly influential in what I wanted to do, and kind of setting the mold for me in terms of my career and my path moving forward. But simultaneously, I'm growing up at the same time. Grunge is becoming huge, so these things are all happening at one time. But yeah, church was my beginning, man. That's where I started out, and that's where a lot of the sound, when you listen to my music, a lot of that sound comes from the church, but it's also enshrined in that Seattle sound.
Did you start with the guitar, or was there an instrument leading you to the guitar? Where did your instrumentation begin?
If you've ever been to like a Pentecostal church, man, the drummer was always the man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say, or the woman, because I've seen some great players come through the church. So the drums were my first love. And if you listen to a lot of my stuff rhythmically, that's where I get that from. A lot of my beats are derived from hip hop and a lot of the influence of what I heard in the gospel church. So, but drums was my first instrument, and that was my first love. And then I taught myself piano. And then I formally took violin in high school or in middle school, and then that's when I got introduced to the guitar after that. So there's quite a few instruments before that.
So you signed with the Big Machine label group, and an interesting label to sign with, because they're known for, they've gotten into rock relatively recently with Bad Flower and You, but before that they were Tim McGraw, and all these, Scott Borchetta was Taylor Swift, and now they're getting into the rock genre with all the labels that are out there. What was it about Big Machine that you're like, yeah, no, these are the guys that I want to work with?
Well, yeah. So the Big Machine label group, and it's, first of all, the resources. They have. Having worked with some of the biggest names in country and in music, they had a lot of resources to choose from. And to utilize, but also, the Varvatos imprint was, when they told me I could be myself, and that they wanted to continue for me to push and strive to continue to be a better version of myself. That was, for me, was the selling point, and the fact that there weren't many rock, bands on their label. There's maybe 2 or 3 rock bands on their label. That for me was a big deal. It meant that I was allowed the resources and the attention to continue to push and to thrive in this industry, especially in my first go around with the major label. I think that was a big deal for me. So, and also John Varvatos, as well as Scott Borchetta, but yeah, John Varvatos is such a connected person in rock and roll. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who works in rock and roll or plays in the music industry that doesn't know who John Varvatos is. He's the who's who of rock and roll.
I think it's interesting that you point out that them not having a lot of rock artists is a good thing, because over the years, rock bands have sort of gotten lost in the shuffle. All these bands get excited to be signed to a major label, and then there's Metallica at the top and all these other bands towards the bottom fighting for those scraps, and a lot of them get left behind. And it's probably much more beneficial to be one of a couple as opposed to one of 30.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be. It can be, depending on who you're working with. And luckily, I'm working with really great people that really have an affinity for rock and roll, and the artists that they work with, they want to see us thrive, and they want to see us continue to be successful in the industry. So I'm very thankful for that.
So even though people are just starting to sort of learn about you across the country right now, thanks to Take Me Away, you've been at this for quite some time with, other bands, playing with other artists. What was sort of your first taste of like being a road musician and kind of being a part of the business?
That would have been in 2011, about 2010, 2011, I think probably through 2012. I was handpicked to be the guitar player for a punk group called Deep Cotton, who was associated with Janelle Monáe's label Wonderland. And so that was my first taste of being a road musician, and also my first taste of getting behind the scenes to see a major label artist do what they did. And I think that was the biggest inspiration for me moving forward. And that's kind of why I chose to do what I'm doing now. There was a time when I got that phone call and they said, hey, we'd like you to move to Atlanta and come work with us. And I had to really make a big decision at that point. I had guaranteed money, a guaranteed place to stay, and guaranteed work. And, I made the decision at that point to go ahead and continue to push doing what I was doing, even though it wasn't good. There was no guarantees. I still was going to struggle to make rent and eat food and do all the stuff that independent musicians go through to get to this point. But overall, that I got so struck by the inspiration and of what Janelle Monáe was doing at the time. I mean, I had to do it for myself. So I'm very thankful to have been touched by that Wonderland cloth and to be able to do what I'm doing now.
Do you get nervous when you decide, like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this for myself? Like, you could have just kept playing, session musician and, being on the road with these other groups. Do you get nervous when you make that decision to go, you know what? No, I need to do this for myself?
Absolutely. There's no guarantees, man. You don't know. There were weeks and months where I didn't know where rent was coming from. There was months where I got a notification saying if I didn't pay up, I was gonna get kicked out. So you never know. But like, it's something about not having that safety net that pushes the human imagination to the limit, and you come up with these creative ways to keep going and moving forward and finding a way to move forward. So I think that it taught me a lot about perseverance and resilience, and more than anything about what the human imagination can do, and that there's no limitations to what you can create or what you can do for yourself.
It's got to feel pretty amazing to now have your technically debut single being in the top 10 for a month, and radio stations across the country are playing it. And the song "Take Me Away," I've seen in other interviews that you've done. It's a very, very personal song for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take Me Away was, it was a story that I knew I needed to tell, and that there's a lot of people around the country, in the United States that are taught that we deserve this American dream, but it's not laid out for us in that way, and so I thought it was really important to tell that story. And for someone like myself who is self-made and kind of had to grind from the ground up, I thought it was going to be important to kind of send that message to the rest of the country and the other people that are struggling, and maybe come from poor families or broken homes or foster kids, but those kids all need inspiration and need to be shown that the cards that they're dealt don't have to be who they end up being. You don't have to be a statistic. That there's a way for you out, and if you keep your mind open and this idea, that keep dreaming and keep moving forward and thriving and pushing forward and learn the gift of forgiveness and things like that you're going to go a long way. So Take Me Away was that story, man. It was a story about hopping on your dreams and getting out of whatever you're born into.
I got to imagine it can be difficult to sort of open yourself up like that, to write a song that is so incredibly personal, to tell that sort of story, to knowing full well that there's a chance that a lot of people are going to hear this song.
Absolutely. But that's the thing about music, though. Music is vulnerable in nature, so I felt like if I was going to do anything, it had to be I wanted to put it on the line in the very beginning, get to know me from this raw standpoint, and I think that to build from there is gonna hopefully help build a foundation that I think a lot of people can relate to. So I thought it was really important to tell that story.
I know you've released a couple of songs from the upcoming album. Where do we stand on when the album is going to be released? I know you're working on it. I assume you're still working on it. I'm thinking probably 2021, I assume, but with the way things are going, things getting delayed, and it's tough to kind of gauge where things are. But you don't release a single without a plan to release an album here soon.
Right. Yeah. So we're still looking at early 2021. I think with the vaccine around the corner and things like that, things are kind of looking up. So I think the idea is to do early 2021. I think in the next month or two here, we're going to be talking with the label to see about releasing a date and a time to when that's going to happen. But we're really close. I mean, we're steps away from getting the album out there. So
how much does it suck to bust your ass for years and years, get to this point where you release a single, it's on the charts, it's doing well, people are hearing it, and you are stuck at home?
It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet, man. There are aspects of it that really suck, which is that, typically I'd be out on the road promoting the single, and I'd be able to really, there's a chance we could have been charted even higher had I been able to tour and do, for me, the live show has always been the bread and butter. So learning how to put a good song together has always been kind of I learned that in reverse almost. I learned how to do a live show from doing these weekly shows and like playing the bars and the clubs and things for hours at a time, and so I've developed this live show that's incredible, but I haven't been able to share it yet. So that is a bitter aspect for me. But one of the sweet parts is that, if I can break and chart as high as I have during a pandemic, that really is an indicator to what is in store for the future, you know. So that's the sweet part. Look forward to that. And so, you know, I'm a person that believes in that Bruce Lee philosophy and expand and contract, you know, and you expand when it's time to expand, you contract when it's time to contract. So as of right now, I'm just going to be patiently waiting and continue working on this record and be thankful for the little things that I have right in this moment. But I'm looking forward to getting out on the road and really displaying that live show that I've worked so hard to create.
Well, I know that a lot of people are looking forward to seeing you out on the road soon, and I've heard nothing but great things about the live show. And I've done a couple of these Zooms before, but I've never done one where there was a live performance aspect of it. So I'm incredibly excited to hear you play a couple of songs that we'll get to then share with everybody else. So
yeah,
Ayron Jones, I know you're excited to play, and I mean, it's not playing a show on a big stage or anything, but this is the best we can do.
Hey, you know, I'll take it. Like I said, you expand when you expand, you contract when you contract, you know. The demon junkie mama abandoned me. Was the day I learned to climb. She kissed my face and said she'd be right back, before she walked away and cried. So take me away from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place. Trouble is all I've ever known. How am I supposed to find some peace of mind if I can't stand to be alone? So take me away, just take me away from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place. Won't you take me away? Oh, won't you take me away? Just take me away. Say, won't you take me away? Won't you take me away? From this lonesome place, from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place, from this lonesome place.
That's awesome, man. That was, I mean, to get to see it. I mean, and again, I realize that it's not the same. It's not, you know, being on stage, but getting to hear it live after hearing it. You know, we played the song quite a bit on the radio station. To hear you play it live and then to picture you playing it on stage, I imagine that the energy that you have when you play it on stage has got to be off the charts.
Yeah, you know, and that song, I mean, was really written for a loud rock band to be playing, you know, with cats behind you and amps turned up to 12, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, but, you know, just to be able to go ahead and showcase the song in any format right now, you know, I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? In this time period, I consider myself fortunate and lucky to that people even want to hear it, you know, so I appreciate it.
And I think the great thing about the song is you kind of get a lot of, you can kind of hear a lot of your inspirations in there, because I mean, the beginning, you have a Tom Morello vibe, and then you get the classic rock and the blues. And I mean, it's all sort of in that one song. You're able to meld all those things together.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And that's kind of been the goal. I think even as a kid, I remember I used to have this idea. I had a buddy of mine who was really into hip hop, and I was like, we should create this thing called Raw. And it was like the Rap Rock Artists Association Worldwide, which was the idea was to be able to blend all these genres and these styles together in a way that was going to continue to pay homage to the respectful genre, but still, showing these little glimpses of influences from different places. So I'm happy now to be at this point in my career and at this point in my life to have kind of perfected that and be able to, that people are able to kind of pick those little things out here and there.
I'm thinking like Zach De La Roca could be a member, and Fred Durst could be a member. And I mean, there's plenty of people that you could have join that group.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%, man, 100%.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe that's still something that you can do in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. I have such a appreciation and an affinity for hip hop. I mean, I grew up in the inner city, so having grown up in the inner city, I love hip hop, man, and it continues to. I try to show it in my music, but also, just in what I talk about, and that, this genre of hip hop has been so highly influential, I think, across the board. I mean, especially in this time now. I mean, as a radio person, you probably well know this, but like, hip hop is the most influential genre in the world right now. And so you'd be hard pressed to find a single person in the world that really hasn't been touched at some point by hip hop. So I try to put that in my music the best I can.
As a rock guy that also loves hip hop, does it bother you? They just had the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony recently, and Nine Inch Nails goes in Depeche Mode, Whitney Houston, Biggie Smalls, and like rock fans are pissed that it's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but arguably the biggest rock star on there is Notorious B.I.G., and they have a problem with him going in, and it's right. Ridiculous to me that we've associated, if it's rock and roll, if it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it has to be straight up rock. It can't be anything else.
Well, that's because people mistake the term rock and roll for a genre, and rock and roll actually was just a word to describe American music, Right. So I think that's the issue. I think first of all, I think people really miss rock and roll. That's really where that comes from. If rock and roll was still as popular of a genre as it was, say, back in the 90s, I don't think people would be nearly as upset if Biggie was enshrined into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But rock and roll really was a term to express American music, because American music, like the culture of America, like its people, is super diverse. Like hip hop came about because of funk. You know what I'm saying? And the influence from funk, and started to incorporate things from rock and roll, and same thing with R&B and pop and all these genres. Our genres are so blended together, especially now in the millennial era. Our genres are so much more blended together than they ever have been. So I think that if rock and roll was still as popular as it was in days previous, I don't think people would be nearly as disappointed. But I think someone like Biggie deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think Run DMC deserves to be there. I think he's highly influential in music history, especially American music history.
Yeah, I mean, and at this point, when you put in Biggie and you start putting in all these other hip hop artists, there are so many after Biggie that are going to need to go in as well. You can't have Biggie in there and not have Jay-Z in there. You can't have Jay-Z in there and not have Kanye in there with what he's done in the past 15 years or whatever. So it's going to be, maybe it just needs to be renamed to get that, but it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We can't pigeonhole it.
No, it's not, and it shouldn't be. I think people just, when they interpret rock and roll, it should just say American Music Hall of Fame. That's what it really is.
Well, speaking of rock and roll, I think you've got another song to play.
Oh yeah, I got one more here. Sorry, this thing falls out of tune.
That's all right.
To cause you in a sorrow, I never meant to cause you in a pain. one time see you laughing. I only want to see you laughing in a purple rain, purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. I only wanna see you laughing in the purple rain. Honey, I know I never want to be your weekend lover. I only wanna be some kind of friend, yeah, yeah. And honey, I could never steal you from another. It's such a shame our friendship had to end. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Only wanna see you standing in a purple rain. Honey, I know that times are changing. It's time we all restart for new. That means you too. You say you wanna lead her, but you can't seem to make up your mind. I think you better close it and let me guide you to the purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain. In the purple rain. I only wanna see you standing in the purple rain. Oh, in the purple rain.
Every ounce of energy not to just start like belting out Purple Rain.
I know, man.
Yes, this is awesome.
Yes.
I appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. I am looking forward to hearing more from you. I know that you've got some big plans, and I'm hoping that in 2021 you are able to get out and play these songs and get in front of people, because I mean, I imagine that the excitement that you have with what's happening for you in your career right now is so immense and so fulfilling, but also you want to be out. You want to be out playing these shows and doing these things. And I'm excited for you to be able to do that hopefully in 2021.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm excited too. You know, like I've always said the best gifts in the world are not those that you keep for yourself. The best gifts in the world are those that you can give to others. You know, and so for me, music has been that gift, and it is my dream and my hope at this point in my career to get out and be able to give that to the people that have helped it become what it is now. I mean, without the people, this would mean nothing. So I'm hoping it out there at some time in the near future.
Well, looking forward to hearing the album, hearing more from you, and hopefully we'll see you out on the road very soon, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. It means the world to us here, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Appreciate it, man. You take care.
All right, see ya.
See you, man.